Hey everybody, can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Just wanted to welcome you very quickly from the perspective of Global Atlanta. I'm Trevor Williams, managing editor of the publication, and I'll talk a lot more, so I'm going to hand you over right now to our host, Millard Martin, to give you a few words of welcome. This is Neil Wolko, and welcome us today. Thanks.
I don't need that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Millard Martin has been a partner with Global Atlanta, and I think now since 2016. We love having these consular conversations. We don't normally get an ambassador here. We're very excited to have the ambassador here as well. We thank you for being here, and I do want to introduce Ricky Bevington with the World Affairs Council of Atlanta to say a few words as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you to Trevor. Thank you to Millard Martin for sponsoring. And this is a great opportunity for two important Atlanta organizations to partner, Global Atlanta and the World Affairs Council of Atlanta, on hosting the ambassador today. So I'm grateful for the partnership of Global Atlanta and for the ambassador for making time out of your very, very busy schedule to talk to this incredible group. And we will have Q&A after Trevor's conversation, so please get your questions ready. The World Affairs Council of Atlanta was founded in 2010. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization, and we would love to see you at any of our future events. I've got some staff members here. Please raise your hands here in the middle. Feel free to speak with any one of them about information about joining the council or getting involved. We have a board member here, Rocky Reed from Coca-Cola. Thank you for being here for today, Rocky. And we have some other members in the audience too, Amber and Nancy. And so thanks again to Global Atlanta and Millard Martin, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, sure.
So yes, as Neil mentioned, normally we're sitting here in a series we call Consular Conversations, but we couldn't quite use that title today, given the ambassador's ranking here. We host a series of monthly luncheon interviews with different diplomats from all over the world, usually stationed here in Atlanta, those that are posted in our city. I do have to say we have the Consul General of Pakistan in Houston is in the audience as well. Where are you, Consul General? He might have stepped out.
He's stepped out.
Okay, cool. Maybe we'll introduce him at the end, but he's just taken up his posting. But I always want to acknowledge when we have other diplomats in the audience, and of course, Georgia is within his jurisdiction, so maybe we'll see him back here more frequently, although we hope to see a Pakistani consulate here. We'll talk about that during our discussion. And I'll do a quick introduction of the ambassador, and then we'll kind of launch into our conversation. Ambassador Masood Khan took up, when did you take up your posting in Washington?
Last year.
Last year, okay. I couldn't remember if it was last year or the year before. But before that was the president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and immediately before that, he was Director General of the Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad, one of the top think tanks in Pakistan. And in his distinguished diplomatic career, he served as a spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs very early on, was Pakistan's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, was Pakistan's ambassador to China, 2008 to 2012. I'm very interested in that time period and what's gone on since then. That'll be fascinating to talk about. And then ambassador to the United Nations in New York, 2012 to 2015. So obviously a wealth of experience, and we will be drawing upon that during our conversation. So with that, I think we'll launch into it. Ambassador, if you wouldn't mind using the microphone, that way everybody can hear you in the back. But why don't you start out by telling us what brought you here to Atlanta on this trip? And I'm going to put this microphone down. Yes.
Thank you so much. First, let me thank Mr. Trevor Williams, Ms. Ricky Bevington, and Mr. Neil Wilco for hosting me here, and my colleagues. Our Consul General has stepped out. He'll be back. First Secretary Rizwan Gul is with me. Thank you so much for your hospitality. The first thing that I want to say is that Global Atlanta, the World Affairs Council of Atlanta, and the law firm, they have immense convening power, and that's substantiated by your presence here today. So I'm sure that you are from diverse backgrounds, and I'm flattered that you're all interested in Pakistan. Your first question, Asma, let me tell you that there's a wonderful, wonderful community leader here, Pakistani American community leader. Her name is Sanam Aziz.
Mm-hmm.
We were at the Blair House a couple of weeks ago, and Secretary Blinken had hosted an Eid party, Eid Milan party, and she invited me to come to Atlanta, and I'm here. This is reason number one.
Okay.
And I had a meeting with the community members yesterday,
Yeah.
all very successful, and I was really proud of the achievements that they've made. Doctors, financiers, entrepreneurs, educationists, working in think tanks, very confident, very successful people, very prosperous people.
Right.
So the second reason is that I don't know where he is. I can't. Where's Mr. Mughal?
Yeah,
Yes.
Farouk.
Oh, over there.
Yes.
Now the other reason is last year, by getting elected to the Georgia Assembly, Mr. Farooq Mughal made us all proud, Pakistani Americans, and also Pakistan as a nation.
Yes.
Because he's the first lawmaker. We have another lawmaker. She's a senator. Her name is Syra Draper, but he's the first male member.
There we go.
And the second is that he's an outstanding person. As I was talking to the mayor a short while ago, and I said that he didn't sit on his laurels. He didn't also. What he did, that he quickly, speedily moved a resolution in the assembly and had it approved. And the resolution establishes sister state partnership, sister state relationship between Pakistan and one of the biggest between Georgia and one of the biggest provinces of Pakistan, Sindh,
Yep.
which is ancient civilization and which has the biggest metropolis we have in Pakistan, Karachi. So that's the reason for visiting. I wanted to touch base with community here. It's a very vibrant community. I'm told that the number should be 30,000,
Wow.
and it's growing, right?
And now you know how Farouk got elected. Right?
So this is,
I'm just kidding.
one of the reasons was that I should interact with this fabulous audience.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Great.
those are the three reasons I have.
Well, I have to say, and I wanted to thank Farouk as well. Thank you, Farouk, for helping us set this up. We've worked together on many occasions, and Farouk's a great ally of the global business community here in Georgia, really focused on driving things forward, which I really appreciate. And fortunately, as I said, we have a monthly series. Fortunately, your trip aligned with a date that we had wide open. We weren't able to get a consul general to do it, so when I saw that Farouk was hosting you here in Atlanta, I thought we might as well fill that space. So we're all privileged to have you here. Well, you've just come from the Capitol, I think.
Yeah.
And the mayor's office as well.
Mayor's office, but earlier, I think Mr. Farooq introduced me to about 15 lawmakers, and we had good. I spoke to them, and then we had interaction, and I invited them to visit Pakistan. They were very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
They look at Pakistan through the prism of Mr. Farooq Mughal, who is a wonderful person.
Yeah.
So it's a positive prism,
Right.
positive lens that we have there on the Capitol. So it was a wonderful meeting.
Yeah.
And they were curious about the landscape, the people, education, and so on. It was a good conversation.
Good. Well, I want to reverse that a little bit, and I think, is this your first trip to Georgia?
No, I
Okay.
used to come here
Okay.
earlier when I used to be posted in Washington, D.C., but this is kind of my first. I used to go to the universities,
Yes,
Georgia
yes.
Tech and
Uh-huh.
other, but this is kind of more formal this time.
Right. So that was leading to my question of, we talked about the lens on Pakistan from this direction. What about the lens on Georgia from the Pakistan side? I mean, you talked about your growing diaspora community here. I'm sure they put a nice face on Georgia for people back home, but do people think about the Southeast U.S. From Pakistan when they're thinking about investment or settling here or sending their kids for education?
Frankly speaking, it was not on the map of Pakistan.
Yeah.
It was not on the radar screen, but Mr. Farooq Mughal has put it on the radar screen because his initiative, his resolution was widely publicized in Pakistan. People came to know about Georgia, the sister state partnership with Sindh. So this was a very, very positive development, both optically and substantively.
Yeah.
So in that sense, but I'd say that Georgia is important to us. I mean, our students have been coming here, doctors have been coming here, other professionals have been coming here. We've benefited from the rich educational and technological ambience of Georgia for decades. We were partners in many things, including the war against terrorism. So, and I met an ex-military officer this morning. I mean, he's a lawmaker now.
Yeah.
So I think that, but I've been doing some quick reading on Georgia. I learned that you are the 22nd largest economy in the world by GDP, and that you're home to headquarters of many multinational corporations and tech giants, and you're third in the list within the United States. That's quite an achievement. And the trade between Pakistan and Georgia has been growing very rapidly, very exponentially. In fact, this year the figure is nearly $1 billion, out of which 600 million we've exported, 600 million worth of goods and services we have sold to Georgia. Georgia exports agricultural products, also timber, I was told.
Timber, yeah, that's huge.
25 million last year is a huge chunk of your exports. So we have a relationship, we have a complementarity. It has to be scaled up.
Yeah, amazing. Well, how do you? I was going to ask you from the diaspora perspective. Have you systematized from the embassy side? Have you systematized your outreach to the diaspora around the U.S., or is that a work in progress right now? It seems that there's been a lot of consciousness about the growing community here, and I remember former Consul General Hashmi from Houston coming here quite frequently and saying that the discussions were to begin on establishing a consulate here in Atlanta. Now, I don't know where that process might be or if it's still in the infancy stages, but to me it seems like that's an acknowledgement of what you just mentioned, that there's a large and active diaspora.
Aftab Chaudhry is our new Consul General. He recently arrived in Houston, Texas. He stepped out of the room.
Yeah, here
Can
he
you
is.
get up and
Consul General Chaudhry.
be
Yes.
recognized?
Yes, thank you.
Full
for being
circle. So, it's one of the first states that he's visiting after assuming his position. He attaches highest importance to a close liaison with Georgia, the community here, and my predecessors, I was told yesterday, my predecessors have been promising establishment of a consulate here. So, ad nauseum. But it hasn't happened.
Yes.
So yesterday, while talking to the community, I said that this time I'll turn it to a solid, concrete proposal.
Okay.
We'll work on it. And
Here,
am I still
I'll
audible?
switch with you.
No, it's okay. I must have done something.
It may have run out of battery. Let's see. Yeah, you take that one. I'll just steal yours in the front.
Well, I was having a conversation with the Mayor Dickens, a short while ago, and he said he raised the same point. Consulate General here, and he told me that there are, in fact, he had a very smart director of international relations, and he gave us the statistic that there were 71 consulates here. So they put us to shame that we have lagged behind. We will catch up.
Okay.
But let me tell you that in the meantime, while we work on this proposal, yesterday talking to the community leaders, I said that we will request our Consul General to pay visits to Atlanta frequently, and he can have consular days and trade and investment days so that they can do visa facilitation, attestation of documents and other chores. But while I was talking to the mayor, I also suggested that in the interim, let's have an honorary consul general,
Yeah.
so that some influential American or Pakistani American that would kind of
Get things
a
going.
temporary
Yeah.
measure. Okay.
Yeah. Well, without getting too deep into the intricacies of diplomacy, like what would be required on our side and on your side to make that happen? I mean, I know there has to be an approval process with the State Department, but I'm sure you have to go through a certain process within Pakistan in the legislature as well.
Well, consulates are expensive and then expensive to establish.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are persistent, we'll make that recommendation to the government of Pakistan, and we have to pursue the proposal diligently.
Yes.
Otherwise, there are many other priorities competing as far as the foreign minister is concerned or the prime minister is concerned. So it's on us. The onus is on us to push it. I would say that the United States is very supportive. State Department is very supportive. I mean, if we justify the need, they're very forthcoming. Recently, we established an honorary consulate in Orlando. They approved that
Oh.
within no time.
Yeah. All right. So we should look for that as the first step, and then we'll work on the harder stuff.
Sure.
Okay. Good.
And you keep raising this issue.
I will.
Repeatedly.
I certainly will. You're talking to someone who does a series of interviews with diplomats, so I think we'll be on top of it. But I think the main reason for that is because of all that you're saying, that it creates this occasion for connection and moving things forward in terms of the relationship. So, well, you spoke with the diaspora last night, right? And you have a lot of members of the diaspora here as well. But if you were to talk to the non-diaspora for a moment, the local Atlantans who maybe are a clean slate when it comes to Pakistan, and you'll see that I'm starting with the easy questions. But if you were to give them your best sales pitch about what Pakistan's import for the world and what reasons that we have in Georgia for looking at Pakistan versus the myriad other countries that are out there vying for our partnership, how would you persuade them?
Well, I'll start with the superlatives. I'd say that Pakistan is one of the best countries in the world. It's a pivot in the neighborhood. It's becoming a tech hub, and we hope that it would be a destination for investment, not only from around the region, but from across the continents. We have the requisite infrastructure. We also have a youth bulge. Some 140 million Pakistanis out of a population of 220 million are young men and women, and below the age of 30. So they are an asset, and it's growing, and they are contributing to Pakistan's economy. They are also part of the international economic mainstream. They are studying and practicing modern. They are studying new technologies. They are kind of investing in tech startups very aggressively, very successfully. The rate of failure of ecosystems has been small compared to its growth. So I would say we have a future. We've had some difficulties in the recent past, some political uncertainty, and we have had our own economic woes. But don't be disappointed. We'll make it. We'll make it, and not because I'm the ambassador of Pakistan. I'm really proud of who Pakistanis are. Talented, dedicated, very hardworking, and ready to connect with the rest of the world. Connectivity is a priority for Pakistan, not just in the region, but with the United States of America, the whole of North America and Europe. And if you have to look at us, I mean, I was talking about Mr. Farooq Mughal, but all the leaders here, I met the Vice President of the Carter Center here. There's there are many other gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, women. Women are doing quite well here
Mm-hmm.
in the United States. I mean, Pakistani American women, but women back home are also doing a fantastic job. Whether it is business, whether it is different professions, we have a judge in the Supreme Court, which was a benchmark for us for years and decades. So we are a great nation, and we have fabulous landscapes in the north of the country. That is good for tourism, adventure tourism.
Mm-hmm.
If you love deserts, we have plenty of them. And I was talking to the lawmakers, and I said I was boasting about it, that we have 7,000 glaciers. And there's the largest number of glaciers outside the polar region. So they're melting fast. So
Come quick.
climate
right?
change.
Yeah.
So
That's
what
great.
I want to say is that it's a wonderful country, and we've had very good relations with the United States, now with Georgia, and we want to develop it and take it to a higher plane.
Well, tell us a bit about what's happening in the bilateral relationship, right? Especially, particularly after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. There was obviously the former PM Imran Khan was saying that Afghans had thrown off the shackles of slavery, et cetera, et cetera. I know that it's always been a complex security relationship with a lot of cooperation and a lot of dancing to figure out. But what's kind of the state of play right now, particularly given the turmoil that's going on in Pakistani politics?
After the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, there was a period of uncertainty as to the exact nature of relationship between Pakistan and the United States, because we were prosecuting a war, and it lasted for 2 decades. And at times we had differences, and we also collaborated. So I mean,
Exactly.
that's part of history. But we had to move on. We had to move on in a manner that we preserve the strategic pincer of our relationship, but at the same time, we moved more aggressively into the non-security areas. The security areas, there were 3 priorities. So we have, in fact, preserved and safeguarded the framework that we had, which is Afghanistan stabilization. There are some residual issues, including terrorism.
Right.
We have to tackle that. And I think that security in our region and in the neighborhood, extended neighborhood of Pakistan is fragile.
Right.
And so we need America's attention there. I mean, America should not disengage lock, stock, and barrel like they did in the 1980s, late 1980s. And then they discovered Taliban a decade later and Osama bin Laden in the region. So what we want to say is that there should be kind of continuity in our security cooperation, intel to intel, military to military, and particularly counterterrorism, because the threat is still there. It is potent. Now, in the non-security area, we have had dialogues, very high-level dialogues on trade and investment. Also, the health sector, education sector has been a priority. The United States is happy with this new phase of relationship. The State Department, the White House, they support us. So does Congress. I mean, congressional leadership is supportive of this relationship, this new phase. So I would say that, and we're inducing the United States to invest in renewables.
Yes.
You have extraordinary competencies in this area, and climate change, help us with climate change, adaptation and mitigation. So these are the areas. Counter narcotics is another priority. Defense restores the defense partnership we had, particularly defense trade partnership that we had before January 2018. So you're a Republican or a Democrat?
I'm neutral. Now he's giving me the hard questions. No, I can't declare that.
You were not. This is private. You were not expecting this question. No, the reason I asked...
I'm equally dissatisfied with both parties. How about that?
So you're middle of the road, as a matter of fact, making your choices. But what I want to say is that President Trump unjustifiably terminated this relationship that we had through FMS, foreign military sales and foreign military financing, on January the 1st, 2018, by using his Twitter account. So it needs to be reversed.
Yeah.
So we've had some talks with the defense side here, Pentagon, DoD, to get that relationship restored.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, this is maybe something you might not want to talk about. I don't know, but like, how do you manage that in the framework of the Russian war in Ukraine and growing U.S. ties with India on the defense front, right? It seems
Say
like
again, the last bit. India.
Growing ties with India on the different defense front, particularly
of the United States.
Yes.
Of the United States.
Right, because it seems like those two challenges might make it tough for American lawmakers in particular to want to back the restoration of these sales to Pakistan.
Ukraine is an unmitigated disaster, as a matter of fact. It's a war that has punished the people of Ukraine first and foremost, and millions of people have migrated. Houses have been disrupted. Supply chains were affected around the world. Pakistan was directly affected because we invested into our relationship with Ukraine for decades. And we used to have economic relationship with Ukraine. We also used to have a military partnership. So we were really disappointed because of that war. We used to buy fertilizers and wheat from them. Our students used to go there to study. So I think the people of Ukraine have been suffering for the past 1 year. I was talking at the Middle East Institute, and there I said that for the rest of the world, it has become business as usual. You hear about casualties, and you think it's like other news, weather or some minor catastrophe here and there. But this is a war, the fiercest war in Europe after the Second World War. So I think that we kind of remained equidistant, because after years of diligence, we were on the verge of having a rapprochement with Russia. But when our former Prime Minister was in Moscow on that very day, President Putin launched an attack against Ukraine. So that was not very helpful, but our preference throughout has been dialogue and diplomacy, and we think that this problem should be resolved using the agency of the United Nations Secretary General. There should be, there are provisions in the Charter for Pacific Settlement of Disputes through negotiation, through mediation, through arbitration. Third parties can get involved. Well, the war is quite intense, but you don't see the same sort of intensity in diplomacy. Your next question.
And both those were kind of combined. Like, how do you, if you're trying to be equidistant, right? That's not a position that the U.S. is going to really be favorable toward, right? And then also, as we get closer to India, you're kind of rival in the neighborhood. Does that reduce the scope for potential collaboration with Pakistan's military?
Well, I'd say that the United States is the superpower, so it understands the dynamics. It also understands the compulsion a country like Pakistan faces. So I think early last year there used to be a lot of criticism, but India was also equidistant. In fact, sometimes tilted towards Russian Federation. So that roiled American decision makers here, but they didn't say anything about it publicly. So these are the altered realities of our world. So United States can understand why some nations are trying to do that. Pakistan, during this period, this past year, it has been helping Ukraine also. We've been sending humanitarian consignments, and so we feel their pain. We've also been talking to Russia. We recently bought Russian oil, crude oil, within the cap which was agreed to by G7 countries, United States and G7 countries. And the United States has not objected to it. Why? Because India is doing the same, other countries are doing the same. And so international politics is more complex than we think. You're not supposed to make binary choices.
Yeah, no, good point. Has the, I mean, I don't want to stay on defense for too long, but I'm curious, you've had some pretty devastating natural disasters in Pakistan, and flooding particularly. And
you deliberately skipped India, you've forgotten about it.
No, I don't want to stick on it too long.
We'll come back. Let's go to the floods.
I'm happy to talk about India, but
later.
Yes, but I was interested in the security, since we're kind of in the security context right now. I was kind of thinking, you mentioned getting the wheat from Ukraine. I was wondering how much food security in Pakistan is being affected by what's going on, particularly given that your harvests are most likely not going to come through given the flooding in a lot of cases.
That was a very severe blow, as a matter of fact. I mean, last year these floods were devastating. And they ruined our economy. I mean, cumulatively, we incurred a loss of about $33 billion, out of which we will have to finance half of it. In fact, I mean, the half that we needed immediately. We appealed to the world, to donors, friendly countries, and they promised to give us $9 billion. So it's a slow process. You don't get, I mean, on the day the pledges are made, a check of $9 billion is not handed over to you. So we live in the consequences of that flood. It has, of course, affected food security. And we had fuel shortages, and that's why we had to buy Russian oil. So, but we have started reconstruction, and we hope that we will succeed. We have an apparatus. The United States is also helping us. Our delegation, led by Deputy Administrator USAID, was recently in Pakistan. I mean, her priority was a health dialogue, but she also went to the flood-affected areas. And we're trying to figure out how to make this reconstruction holistic. I mean, it should not be just roads and bridges or houses. It should be about medicine and education and waterborne diseases. And so I think that we're doing well. We can do better with the support of the United States, with the enhanced support of the United States.
Well, I appreciate your faith in our leaders to understand the difficulty with binary choices, but with regard to China, it doesn't seem like we have that capacity. So given your service in China, I mean, I know this was a long time ago at this point, and the relationship between the U.S. and China particularly has changed quite dramatically since you served there as ambassador. But I know that some in the U.S. see Pakistan's relationship with China as problematic, given that China is investing in infrastructure, et cetera. I think the argument on your side would be that you need the infrastructure to grow economically, and that China is your neighbor. But it does create some challenges, particularly when you talk to lawmakers here who are making it a binary choice between the U.S. and China when it comes to such aid and development. So how does Pakistan negotiate that?
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the most important and critical relationship that China has with a foreign country?
I would say it's with the U.S., but maybe I'm biased.
All right. There you go. What I want to say is that Secretary Blinken was there recently, and they work on the schedule of both sides for months to hold this meeting. I think this has boosted confidence. They've been able to address some of the issues directly. The reason is, I mean, this is the most important, the most critical relationship in the world, and probably in the recent history of the world, between two nations, because they are the most codependent nations on Earth. Janet Yellen was saying that United States is not decoupling, that it is de-risking, and so on, which means that you would like to maintain that relationship, economic relationship that's there. You've invested heavily in China. China has invested heavily in the United States. You have concerns about cybersecurity, and here in the United States, I mean, you hear different kinds of opinions. One is that you can outcompete China. I mean, it's not a problem because you're still leaders in innovation and cutting-edge technologies, but you need a different environment, different international milieu to operate. The other is, of course, paranoia about China, and I think you'll have to make those decisions. When it comes to other nations, United States, in all fairness, has not asked us to make a binary choice. They've never said, I mean, Secretary Blinken or your other visitors who've gone to Pakistan. And they say that, I mean, it would be good for Pakistan, how it will think about the choices it is making. So it's a very oblique and subtle way of saying that this is not a good choice and that better models are available. But here is our version. You see, we had strong ties with the United States before we developed higher than the mountains relationship with China. Right? Our relationship with the United States predates our relationship with China. And but in the 1960s, things started changing a bit in the subcontinent, and China started supplying defensive equipment to Pakistan. It also started helping Pakistan economically. The United States' attention was diverted and diversified towards our neighbor, right? And then we have the Afghan war, and we got together with the United States. But there've been ups and downs. We've had peaks and troughs, but China has been there since early 1960s. I used to be the ambassador there, and China used to counsel us that you should have good relations with the United States of America. They never said that Pakistan should make that a unilateral choice for one country. The other thing is that when I was the ambassador, even today, we do defense trade with China. I mean, we buy lots of stuff from them. We have joint exercises with them, military exercises with them. We also, our officers train there. Officers train here in the United States as well. So the defense component is quite strong. So is the economic realm. Why? Because we have China-Pakistan economic corridor. So we can't just pull out. We do appreciate that American system is value-based, and you have this attraction all around the world because of the values that you advocate: democracy, human rights, equal opportunities, rule of law. So it's not just Pakistan. It's you have inspired nations around the world. Even in China, they used to call Meihua, which means beautiful country. One translation could be beautiful country. So what I want to say is that it's a complex situation. I hope that America understands it. There are congressmen, senators who would say that make choices. For that, we would hope that we have more business going out of the United States to Pakistan. We have more investment, our trade increases, more students come here to study. The number of students who come in here is 8,000 per year. It's a
Should be
small
more,
number
yeah.
given the population of Pakistan and given the talent pool that we have. We should have more students here, and we should have more business ties. And that's why in that context, this Sindh, Georgia relationship is very important. We should know each other. We
Yeah.
should trade frequently.
Mhm.
We should have investments
Yeah.
in Georgia and Pakistan. So there's a vacuum that needs to be filled up.
Okay. Well, since we need
just
to,
a bit.
yeah, sure.
And if you're sitting here from this powerful podium, I believe that Pakistanis should get admission in new technologies and STEM disciplines,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Well, that's what we need. So
You'll say it.
we need all the talent we can get.
Say it in the next session.
Yeah.
You'll remember to reiterate this.
For sure. Well, in that context of growing investment, right? How would you counsel companies that are looking at Pakistan to navigate the complexities of doing business there? I think there's always a growing sense of the need for reform to establishment of businesses, taxation, et cetera. There's also a lot of political turmoil right now. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit. I mean, I know the basic outline. I know diplomats don't like to talk politics. So if you give us a sense for how you would, how do you negotiate a country where there's, an ousted prime minister and, reactions that seem to be sometimes disproportionate to those on the outside? Like, how do you violence in the country? Et
I'd
cetera?
say you have a great future. You eschew politics, you'll go very far. Right? So I think.
Well,
that,
I
but you
always
have
talk
asked this
about it
question
in
very
in the context of political risk for companies. How about that?
Well, let me tell you, political risk. Okay, I'll address it up front. Let me tell you that there are 80 American enterprises
Okay.
there, and some of the companies which have headquarters here in Georgia, they've been doing business there
Mhm.
for decades. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Philip Morris, also Dunkin' Donuts. I think they have started. Dunkin' Donuts. And many others.
Based here in Atlanta now, Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I saw the list today.
Through an acquisition, but yeah, they're here. Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is that there are many. I have a long list, 80
Mhm.
enterprises.
Okay.
They employ 150,000 people,
Mm.
and they support 1 million households,
Mm.
right? And none of them has moved out. Even in the worst circumstances, I mean, during COVID and post-COVID, they haven't moved out. And their profits are good. In fact, Pepsi is diversifying its products. It's not just the beverages, it is also, it's producing products, agriculture-based products.
Mm.
And it is selling them not just to Pakistani consumers, but to the Gulf consumers.
Mm.
So American investment over the decades has been very satisfactory. It has been a very strong connective tissue between Pakistan and the United States.
Mm.
So we welcome more businesses. You have this threshold, very high threshold that you have there.
Yeah.
And so I would say that now we want Georgia to be more visible there.
Okay.
It can start with Georgia Atlanta visits. We'll link you up with the best think tanks there.
Okay.
And
All right.
also Georgia governor going there, Georgia mayor going there. And what I've gathered here today while I was talking to the lawmakers, to the mayor and other friends last evening, that we should, the ambassador, the consul general, should frequently visit Atlanta.
Mm.
And if we have high-level visitors, ministers or prime minister, they should make Atlanta
We're ready.
their destination.
Well, yeah, it's one thing for Coca-Cola, and I don't know if Rocky's still here if he had to leave, but good, I'm glad because he didn't have to hear Pepsi be mentioned in Atlanta. But it's one thing for those companies to do business in Pakistan, right? Like they have huge amount of resources. A lot of them are there for the domestic market, so they're not necessarily exporting. Of course, some of them do, but I just wonder from a small and medium-sized company perspective, what's being done to improve the
they're
business
doing well.
environment?
American firms are doing well. And there are two types of American firms. There are American firms, and there are Pakistani American firms. And Pakistani American firms are doing medical transcription and billing. They're also doing pharmaceuticals. They're doing diagnostics. They're opening hospitals. In fact, they have an advantage because they know the country like the back of their hand. And they are investing in real estate, which the boom in the real estate has not been affected by any kind of volatility, economic or political. So what I want to say is that and Pakistan, I mean, I cite this figure. Forbes and United Nations Development Program have said that 18 million Pakistanis are in the middle class. And as I said, that human capital is increasing.
Right.
So there's this gloom and doom picture, and then there's this flourishing Pakistan. And so I would say that if you're investing, I'll encourage to.
I'm a journalist, so I don't have any money to invest. But
If you're advising somebody, tell them to invest. Political risk notwithstanding, come January, everything would be stabilized. Inshallah, as they say.
Yes.